Good morning, everybody. Ashley here from Thrive Peer Support. We got a very special episode of Thrive Live today. Our guest, Christi Bartman from Eyes Up Appalachia. I am going to bring my partner, Justin Larson, in now. Good morning.
Good morning. How's everybody doing this morning? Happy Friday. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, I'm super excited about our guest today. A lot of really important information to get out there, and we always want to have this platform to have others on that really have a really important message to share. So again, my name is Justin Larson. I'm the Director of Health Systems here at Thrive Peer Support. I want to thank Ashley for putting this all together. She always does an amazing job. Makes it easier on me. So I'd like to bring in our guest, anti-human trafficking advocate, Christi Bartman.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So we'll jump right into it. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Eyes Up Appalachia?
Certainly, and thank you, Ashley and Justin. I really appreciate the opportunity. I come out of academia, and have been working in the anti-human trafficking area for about a decade on the periphery, but really it is such an issue that needs so much attention. And I was fortunately at a place where I could step away from a full-time academic position and really concentrate on some of the issues that face those that are affected by human trafficking. And one of those issues that we found in Ohio is that there are very few anti-trafficking coalitions throughout Appalachian Ohio. In fact, only half the counties in Appalachian Ohio have an anti-human trafficking coalition. And so I founded Eyes Up and formed Eyes Up to be that, to fill that gap, to help with making the connections between the state resources, which we do have some really great state resources, and those individuals on the ground that are doing such great work, like Thrive and like the others that are working with the vulnerable populations. And so my goal with Eyes Up is simply to the education and awareness around human trafficking, and then to help connect those that are working with those vulnerable populations throughout Appalachian Ohio with those resources that we do have throughout the state.
Thank you. Thank you. I was wondering, for our guests that may not know a lot about human trafficking, would you mind going over the basics of human trafficking and what are some common misconceptions about human trafficking? Because there's a lot going around. A lot of people, aren't really sure what it is, or they think it's one thing and it's another. And there's just so much information for people. It's hard to decipher what's what.
That's so true, Ashley. It really is. And in fact, honestly, if you ask a survivor, particularly a juvenile, if they've been trafficked, they will never, ever use that term, human trafficking. And so even I'm talking to a survivor that had been out of the life for 2 years. She said, it took me almost 2 years to really admit I was a victim of human trafficking. But so technically, the definition is someone who is induced or recruited by someone who harbors, transports, provides, or obtains them by fraud, force, or coercion, and exploits them for the purpose of commercial sex, labor, or domestic servitude. So kind of out of that more of a legal definition, there's a couple of things I want to draw attention to. So someone, it could be male or female. A lot of the misconceptions are that it's only females. Mm-hmm. And while the statistics do bear out that it tends to be, particularly in the sex trafficking, more females, that's not the only individual that's involved, is in the life of trafficking. Fraud, force, or coercion. A lot of people think that there's one of the myths where this white van is driving around Walmart and grabbing girls out of the parking lot. That is, even though occasionally there are kidnappings and that does happen, that is not the typical way human trafficking happens. And so that's another myth we kind of want to try to dispel. The force comes in, unfortunately, more with the act itself, and the situations that the victims find themselves in, not as much what the trafficker uses to control, although there's a term guerrilla pimp that is, that's a very forceful physical abusive relationship, physically abusive. But normally it's the coercion. It's that emotional trauma bond that's formed. And when someone is brought in and groomed, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, I think when someone's brought in and groomed, it's through a longer process of building of trust. And then there's this emotional bond that forms, and the intense complex traumas that form there. There is this coercion that continues to happen throughout. And that's something, that emotional coercion is so important here in that definition. And then commercial sex, and that's again one of those things that people, kind of associate with human trafficking. But labor and domestic servitude are also forms of human trafficking. So labor trafficking, for instance, we had a big issue that was busted by our task force up in Lima, Ohio, which was with Trillium egg farms. And they were recruiting individuals, young men from Guatemala, to come over, and they took their families' mortgages on their families' homes in Guatemala. And then they brought them here with promises of education and good jobs. And but then they took all their documents. They forced them to live in squalor, lack of electricity, lack of plumbing, with a number of men in a small area, and then forced them to work these long hours, threatened their families. And fortunately, we busted that one. The task force busted that one. And so that's another form of trafficking that happens that people don't always think about. That agriculture, forestry, the massage parlor issues can cross sex trafficking and labor trafficking, or domestic servitude. Somebody brought over to serve as a nanny or housekeeper, that once they get over, they're charged exorbitant rent. Their documents are taken. They're forced to to work for almost free. And so there's a lot of different ways that this can manifest itself. And so those are all important notes to know. And the other thing, kind of thinking about your comment, again, when you ask that question, were you trafficked? That doesn't elicit the answer normally. The questions to kind of think about are, have you exchanged sex for anything of value? Rent, drugs, that provided to another person? Was it commercially done? So unfortunately, one of the ways that it manifests itself is a parent trafficking a child. So was the child trafficked in return for drugs, in return for rent, and in those type of things? So those are more what you see and what you're looking at. It is not the movie Taken. If anybody's seen the movie Taken, it's where a young girl is taken to a third world country, and the father, rushes over there and rescues her. And that's not the way it works. It is not.
Had a feeling.
No, it definitely doesn't work that way. It's not the white van. It's not, and it's not a juvenile. Someone under 18 also can't choose to engage in sex work. That is not a choice. That is not a legal choice. And so that falls into trafficking as well. So those are some of that's kind of the overall definition, and some of the ways that you actually see it applied.
So it's like people might not even recognize it's happening to them until way after the fact.
Oh, Ashley, that's so true, because I was just talking to a counselor the other day, and she said, I am embarrassed to say how many years I've been working with this person, and I just now figured out they were trafficked. And as the education effort goes, I talk to other people that work, say, with juveniles, under, just in a housing setting or a safe house setting. And they said, oh my God, I didn't understand until I started asking these other questions how many times I've seen this, and I feel so bad. And it's like, no, don't feel bad. Now, move forward. People that say, oh my God, I saw that. I was a nurse midwife. I saw that tattoo. I didn't know what it implied. It's just simply a matter of education. And the people that are being trafficked, when I talk to some folks, down in Appalachia, that the terms that I hear are, it just is, or, oh, that's just crazy Uncle Fred. But then they describe trafficking. And so it is, you're right. I mean, you couldn't have said it better, Ashley. Even people that are being trafficked may not understand that they're being trafficked, or may feel that it's their choice, or may feel so much shame if it's a family or community member not to come forward. So you're right. It's definitely something under the surface a lot of the time.
Christi, what are some of the myths about human trafficking that the general population may have?
Those are more like the white van that's driving around
Yeah.
Walmart, the movie Taken, the QAnon that came out with the Save Our Children, they took that hashtag from what initially was a legitimate campaign and really used it in a political manner that did a disservice to those working in the area. So those are the type of myths that are out there.
It kind of got co-opted, and you know, that's how it happens. It happens really easily.
It does with social media. I mean, there's good things about social media and there's bad things about social media.
So what's the difference between more rural and Appalachian counties?
So that's one reason we have the coalitions in Ohio. Um, think about think about if you were sitting in Columbus or Cincy or Cleveland, a lot of the time human trafficking looks like solicitation on the street. Street work. But in the Appalachian communities where there's not as much of a central focus, it looks unfortunately a lot more like familial trafficking. So the family trafficking family members, or the community trafficking individuals within a community, which makes it even harder to um, not only comprehend, but to address. Just so, for instance, a couple of examples. So there was a family arrested in Scioto County. It was 9 individuals that were arrested indicted in June, federally indicted under human trafficking laws. And what they were doing was having parents bring children to them to use for various purposes, and they were providing the families with drugs and money. And talking to one of the agents that was involved, he said honestly that it is just pure evil what was going on. I mean, we haven't seen publicly some of the depths of things that were going on there. Another one was in Zanesville in 2017. There was a mother who was trafficking her 8-year-old daughter to a 70-year-old man for the weekends. And the way that came about was a teacher was paying attention, and this girl was showing some of the signs, of acting out. The question would never have been, "Are you being trafficked?" But the question the teacher asked was, "What can I do to help you get these assignments done?" And the little girl said, "I don't want to go to that man's house anymore." And that started the investigation that indicted and charged the mother. And so those are, you see more of that type of thing. Talking to some of the individuals that deal with pregnancy clinics and others, the stories that some of the women tell when they come in, even though they don't use the word trafficking, are very recognizable as trafficking situations. And some of the reasons that it's so underground is part of that culture of what happens at home stays at home.
Yeah.
It's not something that's like broadly shared, and it's something that is unfortunately at times normalized, and it's something that is not not brought to the surface because of the geographical separation. There's a lot of space and fewer people with over a lot of space. There's a lot of, if we're doing remote learning now with COVID, it's harder to kind of track through the schools. It's harder to keep eyes on individuals. People are using more, the devices that allow the internet people to approach them on the internet where they wouldn't have in the past. And there's less education about what trafficking is. There's less training for law enforcement, less training for the ERs and other people that might see that. So those are the things that make some of the issues online, in Appalachian counties and rural counties as a whole, more susceptible, more vulnerable. And then if you overlay that with some of the issues like poverty, lack of education, lack of opportunity, substance and drug use is a huge one. So those are the things that make rural areas not only harder to spot, but more open to vulnerabilities.
That's just some awful stories. You must be involved, in trying to help the good come out of it. And I really just I think very highly of you and anyone that does that type of work, because we hear a lot of it from the SUD side of things, as far as peer support. But just you speaking on some of those stories that are just terrible and just awful, that just really opens my eyes, because I think we see it in different areas a lot more often than what we're even thinking about. It's not the white van, like you said, or anything as obvious as that. So just for those that bring awareness to this, it's very important, very crucial. So, what is a normal approach that a trafficker might make?
And that right now, that's kind of changing over the last few years, Justin, with the advent more and more of social media and
Yeah.
everything else. So, on the one hand, it was a lot of the time someone they knew, a community member, a family member, that kind of a situation, until you got into the larger cities and it became a more of a gang, more of a, some of the other broader um, businesses that have been formed around this, unfortunately. But when you look at the rural counties, and now with the advent more of social media, it's the internet and some of the online tactics. We don't It's so hard. I mean, because if you say you're a young girl and you, have issues with your family, issues with school, issues with a boyfriend, and you put out this text or this message in some manner, whatever mode it's over, um, "Life sucks. My life sucks." And there are people out there looking for that individual that's vulnerable, that may be in a bad situation, and so the response is, "Hey, tell me about that. I gotcha." And it's not this grisly looking guy, sitting behind this computer screen. It is either a nice looking man, a nice looking older man, it's a younger person their age, male or female, or it's an older female. It can be anybody that makes that approach. Because a lot of the time in these trafficking rings, there are individuals that come that they use as recruiters. Um, or it could be somebody just disguising themselves as a younger person. But what they do is, this is a long process. This is not a boom, "Hey, I want you to be over here now." This is a, "Oh yeah, tell me about that situation. What's happening really? Oh man, that sucks." And slowly but surely kind of gaining their trust. And a lot of the time, it'll develop into, they call it a Romeo pimp. It's a romantic relationship. They feel that the person that they're targeting feels that they are interested, that they are romantically interested. And so the grooming and the texts continue, "Hey," over periods. "Hey, you look great. Hey, send me a quick pic." And they take a little picture and they send it, and that's all great. And then they keep talking and developing that trust. And then they say, "Hey, you're sexy. Send me a better picture." So they send a little more sexy picture, and then they kind of keep going. And then they've started this relationship, and maybe there's this thing between them, and the victim thinks anyway. They say, "Hey, send me a video. It's just me and you. Just send me this video." And so, unfortunately, they do, and then it flips. I mean, it's good until it's bad, and then it flips, and they say, "Hey, I need you to do a video for my buddy over here." And then finally the person says, "Oh my God, no, I can't do that." And they say, "Hey, I got this video. I'll show your grandmother." And that is more of a similar tactic. Same with, local if you're being recruited personally, it's developing that relationship over time. Somebody that's young, that doesn't really fit in, that has a lot of issues with mental health or substance use or something like that. They'll start providing the drugs. They'll start making them feel like they're part of a big scene. They'll start giving them gifts. And then again, it's good until it's not, and it turns and it just gets ugly so fast. And those are more typical, type of approaches online. There's another one out there that I'm seeing a great deal. And there's different degrees of this. There's different, it can be trafficking, it could be exploitation, it could just be abuse. There's a lot of different levels, but one of the ones that I really am starting to see and worry about is called sugar daddy, sugar baby. And so that is really hitting the college campuses. And what it is a legitimate dating site out there. It's got a website. Um, and generally older men looking for college age women. And the texts that come across, or the Instagrams or tweets or however they used to approach them, say something like, "Hey, my name is so and so. I want to. I'd love to spoil you with $300 a month, and I'll pay your tuition if you'll be my sugar baby." And so, for somebody in a desperate situation, in poverty, with drug use habits, that looks tempting, because on its face, it is not exploitive, but it goes really quickly into exploitation, and then possibly ultimately into trafficking. But talking to students at OU and OSU, they get them all the time, which makes me crazy. So that's another. Those are ways that you see how traffickers might make an approach.
Seems like it's gotten a lot more sophisticated with social media and technology, and it's not really what we would see a lot of the times.
It's true.
Especially with COVID now, everything's different. Everything's different, and it makes it harder for people to reach out for help. If they do realize something's not right. I seen one comment pop up. Let's see. It says Rayanne was asking, "Is that what they call grooming?"
Correct.
Technically,
Exactly.
yeah.
That
You
is
described it really well.
that is exactly the correct term. Good. Perfect. Thank you for saying that. Yes, that is the term.
I'm glad that that's getting more awareness too. Like I see, like in the media, people are talking about like grooming in the music industry, and there's more. There's just more skeletons coming out of the closet. People being exposed for grooming tactics, and victims feeling safe enough to speak out. And I'm glad that that's becoming something people are aware of, because at first people didn't recognize it when it was happening. Like the older guys trying to talk to high school girls, and it was a really common thing. I know even where I'm from, and nobody thought it was weird. Nobody said anything about it. It was just what happened. We just had to know better. We just had to be smarter. And luckily, hopefully our parents would be paying attention. I got lucky, but I know a few girls that didn't get so lucky. But it's everywhere, and we just have to pay attention.
It is, and you need that trusted adult. Now, it could be a parent, which hopefully, you have a good parent, but if you don't, or if the parent is the problem, you have to be able to access those trusted adults, or, like Thrive, the peers that have gone through it and understand it. I mean, that's so important. There's a lot of most of the time, I mean, it's really hard to open up about this kind of stuff. But when you're talking to a peer or someone's been through it, it really gives you the opportunity to kind of really lay it out there and feel like you're not alone in this, because that's part of the technique, is to isolate this person and make that person completely dependent on the trafficker. And I mean, it's so important to have that support, whether it's a trusted adult, whether it's a peer, whether it's a teacher, whether, whoever it is, to have that.
So really going off of what you just shared, is what can someone do that finds themselves as a victim, excuse me, or even knows of someone that potentially could be caught up into this?
There are a couple of things. So first, if it is an emergency situation, oh my God, life and death, 911. Certainly law enforcement if it's a oh my God situation. if it is something that a lot of the time, because people don't realize what this is, they'll call it other things. And so
Right.
those trusted adults or the people in the communities that work with these vulnerable populations, whether it is at a food bank, whether it is at a mental health crisis center, whether it's at the school counselor, those individuals, reach out and let them know what the situation is, and let them help you make the next call. A lot of the time, it's not looked at as a rescue. It's very rarely a rescue. It's more of, what can we do to help? What can we make available for you to help you in this situation? And so that's, kind of the trusted adult to help you there. There's a national hotline that is 888-3737, 888. And you can also text Be Free, BEFREE, which is 233-733. That goes to the national number. And that national number is, you can call that if you think it might be happening. You can call that if it's happening to you, and they will help put you in touch with local resources. But if you have a local resource that you can call, I would call them first. For instance, like in Southeast Ohio, the SAOP is the sexual, oh shoot, I can't think of what that SAOP stands for right now, but they are the group that handles sexual assault and domestic violence. But they also will field calls for human trafficking, and they know all the resources. They cover a 7-county range, and they know all the resources within that range, and they've got a 24/7 number. So if it were me, I'd be calling that number, because they're the ones, boots on the ground, that can help you. And that number, if you happen to be in Southeast Ohio, 740-591-4266. Survivor Advocacy Outreach Program. There we go. That's SAOP.
That's good. I'm going to post these resources, and I'm going to link them in the notes so
Okay, great.
people can have access to them.
The other thing that I'll provide you, Ashley, if you don't have it already, is the coalition numbers and the coalition map. So the Ohio Governor's Task Force website for human trafficking has a coalition map with links to the numbers for those coalitions that cover the majority of the counties in Ohio. And a call into those coalitions is another way to not only get information, to get people to come help, to talk to different organizations about it, to help with the education effort, but also to understand the local resources and gain that as well. So those coalition lines are very important also.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I got another question that's kind of like a branch off that. I was wondering, I've been thinking, trying to process all this information as we're talking about it. And for myself and for people watching, what is something that I can do to be more aware, to learn signs, and is there anything that we can do at home in our own lives to try to be more educated on this?
One of the things that's so important is to pay attention to those vulnerabilities. The vulnerabilities include substance use and abuse, runaways, foster care, involved in 2 or more government services like child welfare and criminal justice system, the home issues around family, disconnected families and things like that. Pay attention to your friends that are in these, that might have these situations, and just, be there for them, to help make sure they're accessing the right resources and not getting involved in the wrong crowds, with, when you see some of these signs that come up, they show up with a brand new pocketbook or brand new phone or something like that they couldn't afford, that it has to be coming from somewhere else. Start to kind of pay attention to those things around you. Pay attention to the, hotels that if you stay in that come and go, that, because a lot of the times the hotels are used for this. Just being aware of what it, might look like. But educating yourself, there are a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of videos out there to better learn more about what it is and what resources are available through the Attorney General's Human Trafficking Initiative site and through the Ohio Governor's Task Force site, and also through Eyes Up Appalachia, our website. And so understand it more, start to learn about it. Invite individuals to come speak to different groups. If you're involved in a church, or if you're involved in youth groups of some type, or business or associations, invite folks to come in and talk about that, just to increase the awareness. Just keep your eyes open. I mean, that's kind of the key for things that look out of the ordinary. And it's not always going to be trafficking, and it may just kind of ring a bell and make you think, and maybe just ask the follow-on question, are you safe? Is there something we can help connect you with? Is there, and it doesn't have to be the human trafficking hotline. Maybe it's a peer support group, or maybe it's a mental health counselor or counselor at school, or, something like that. So those are the things that you can do at home, just to educate yourself, pay more attention, look at, just kind of keep an eye on the things around you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to make sure, for anyone who's watching, definitely share this video. Share it in your groups, get the word out, make sure people are, getting access to this information and being aware of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first step, is to spread awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Let people know it exists.
Exactly. And then addressing those underlying vulnerabilities. We'll get to the prevention side, and that's the only way we're going to really make a big change, is to address those underlying vulnerabilities, like the substance use and otherwise. And so, thank goodness for everything you're doing, and the folks that are working, within the communities that do that, because that's really going to be where it makes the difference. Getting into the education system and talking to youth about respect, about good touch, bad touch, about boundaries, just, we've got to change the mindset. I mean, you do have to change that mindset around what's acceptable, and you have to change that mindset around, or the focus on drugs or other destructive, behaviors that if we can come up with a constructive alternative, that we'll do that over time, and that's what's going to make the biggest difference.
Thank you so much. Justin, did you have any last questions?
No, I want to say thank you, Christi, for coming on here and just continuing to have those conversations. I think it does start with awareness and really knowing the signs, and then what to do when we see those signs. So again, I appreciate you and all the work that you do and having those difficult conversations. So thank you again for coming on and sharing with us.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Oh, how can people follow you and what you're doing?
Oh, okay.
One good question. I want to make sure people are able to get a hold of you if they need to.
Instagram is Eyes Up Appalachia, and for the website is eyesupappalachia.org. One big word.
Awesome, and I'll make sure to include those in the show notes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me on, Ashley. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. This has been really good. This has been so fun and educational and eye-opening, and I feel like I'm going to need to process this for a minute.
That's so much. It's so true. It's a lot of, kind of, you've got to take care of yourself as well when working through some of these issues.
Well, thank you. Thank you, guys, and have a good day, everyone. Thank you for tuning in and watching another episode of Thrive Live. And have a nice weekend. Happy Friday.
Thank you. Bye-bye.